Dinesh, a migrant structural engineer with overseas experience, arrived in Australia 3 years ago. Jade, a domestic graduate structural engineer, completed her studies right here in Australia. Both were excited and ready to kickstart their careers in the construction and design industry. They applied for job after job and received rejection after rejection. To make ends meet, Dinesh became an Uber driver. Jade started working in a warehouse, picking and packing orders. 2 years later, they're still stuck in unrelated jobs. Their confidence shattered. Their chances of landing a role in their field even lower. Why? Because they're now competing with candidates who have stayed active in the industry without a technical gap. Stories like Dinesh's and Jade's are far too common. You've probably heard the saying, when you want to change your situation, focus on what's within your control. So what do you think was within their control? The answer? Tackling the root causes of those rejections they were receiving. And the primary barrier? The lack of local experience. How did Dinesh and Jade overcome this challenge? How did they gain the critical hands-on experience that made them job-ready and employable? This is just the first episode of Dinesh's and Jade's journey. Dinesh kept driving for Uber to make ends meet while tirelessly applying for engineering jobs, but every rejection email sounded the same. Sorry, you don't have local experience. We can't help you. It was frustrating. He had years of overseas experience, had designed multi-story buildings overseas, and knew his engineering fundamentals inside out. So one day, had enough, he finally asked a hiring manager, "Why does everyone keep asking for local experience? I know how to design buildings." The hiring manager listened and then replied, "No doubt your overseas experience is valuable, but here in Australia, we have different standards, construction methods, and design software packages." Then he handed Dinesh a project file and said, "If I hire you today and put this on your desk, can you design it independently?" Dinesh, still frustrated, confidently answered, "Yes, I can." The hiring manager nodded and gave him a moment to review the project. Then he started asking technical questions. "What footing system would you recommend for this site?" Dinesh hesitated and said, "Sorry, I didn't understand the question. Can you elaborate?" The hiring manager rephrased, "Based on the soil conditions, what footing system should we use for this project?" Silence. Dinesh had no idea. He wasn't familiar with the footing systems commonly used in Australian residential construction. The hiring manager sighed and said, "This is why local experience matters. You're a skilled engineer, but without knowledge of Australian construction methods, standards and codes, and software like Structural Toolkit and Space Gas. You'll need training, and if we train you, that means one of our senior engineers has to spend hours training you instead of working on projects and generating profit for the company. That's a financial loss for the company." It finally clicked for Dinesh. It wasn't just about experience, it was about being job-ready. Meanwhile, Jade was still working as a pickpacker. But instead of waiting for a job offer, she took a different approach. She contacted company after company, offering to work for free as an unpaid intern. After countless emails and phone calls, one company finally said yes. Excited, she quit her picking and packing job, ended her source of income to step into an office for the first time as an intern. So, what happened next with Dinesh and Jade? After that tough interview, Dinesh finally understood what was holding him back. He didn't just need local experience. He needed to be job-ready, to walk into an interview, get handed a real-life project, and confidently say, "Yes, I can design this." But not just bits and pieces of knowledge. He needed the full knowledge and skills required to design and draft residential projects based on Australian standards and codes from start to finish, independently and with confidence. So he did what anyone would do. He started searching on the internet, typing, "How to design and draft residential dwellings in Australia." Clicking, clicking, clicking. He opened page after page, scrolled through them, and checked different courses. But nothing covered everything he needed. Each course only tackled one small part of the process. He needed real training, something hands-on, where he could work on actual projects and build the skills that hiring managers wanted. Then he found LearnPedia. He checked the website, watched the videos, read through the training details and testimonials. And that's when it hit him. This wasn't just a course. It was more than that. A training program that wasn't about random bits of information. It was about designing real-life residential projects using Structural Toolkit, Space Gas, and AutoCAD, based on Australian standards and codes from start to finish, just like in an actual job. And by the end of the traineeship program, he'd have a portfolio of Australian residential designs to prove his skills in interviews. He'll have an industry reference and local experience on his CV. This was exactly what he needed. So, he joined LearnPedia's 3-month traineeship program, determined to finally break through. He put in the work, learned everything he needed, and before he even finished the program, he landed a job as a structural engineer. Dinesh's story isn't unique. We've helped hundreds of structural engineers and architects gain the real-life skills they need to enter the Australian residential design and construction industry. Our project-based training ensures you don't just learn, you implement the newly gained knowledge and skills in the real-life projects you'll be designing and drafting throughout the training program. But what about Jade? How is her unpaid internship going? Jade was excited to start her unpaid internship. She had quit her pickpacking job, her only source of income, hoping that this opportunity would finally lead to a structural engineering or site engineering job. On her first day, she sat at her desk and asked the team for a project to work on. They handed her one, and that's when reality hit her. Okay, how do I start? How do I design this? What should I do next? She needed guidance. She needed training. So she started asking the engineers around her for help, but they were swamped with deadlines and projects. They didn't have hours to sit down and walk her through every step of the project. She got bits and pieces of information whenever someone had a spare moment to answer a quick question. But she needed a structured, practical training process, not scattered advice and guidance here and there. Before she knew it, 3 months had passed. Her internship was over. She had to leave. And what did she gain? No real technical skills. No confidence to work on real-life projects independently. Just a line on her CV that said, 3-month internship. She was devastated. She had given up her job in an unrelated field, her only source of income, thinking this internship would make her employable. But in the end, she was back at square one, jobless and still clueless about real-life engineering and construction work. Meanwhile, Dinesh had taken a different path. While driving for Uber, he kept his income and used his free time wisely. He enrolled in LearnPedia's 3-month traineeship program, where he gained the hands-on skills and knowledge he actually needed to confidently work on real-life projects assigned to him. The 3 months traineeship program is self-paced, so he could fit it around his schedule. He worked through real-life projects from start to finish, attended weekly live Q&A sessions, developed his very own Australian portfolio, and received personalized mentorship from an experienced structural engineer who is active in the field. And while Jade was back to square one, still searching for a way into the industry, Dinesh was job ready. In just 3 months, Dinesh gained the practical skills, knowledge, confidence, and portfolio to prove it, and he landed a job as a structural engineer. You see, Jade's choice determined where she'd stand in a few months, and her story isn't unique. We see it happen all the time. This was the final episode of Dinesh and Jade's story, but there are new stories coming soon. Follow us on social media to stay tuned, and if you're a graduate or migrant structural engineer or an architect looking to break into the Australian residential industry, click below to check your eligibility and learn more about our training programs.